Welcome back to America Right Now. We now know that late last month, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin underwent surgery for prostate cancer. Surgery that had complications that incapacitated him to the point where he was unable to lead the largest and most powerful armed forces in the world. That's not the problem. That's life. Things happen. The problem was that he didn't tell his boss, the President of the United States, the National Security Council, or even key members of his own staff about his condition. The acting Secretary of Defense was notified via email that the powers of the office were transferred to her while she was on vacation in Puerto Rico. There can be only one reason for this dangerous breach of protocol, chain of command, and deception: the continued spreading of Potomac fever within the beleaguered Biden administration. The White House now says that it will review protocols for such a situation.
It is not optimal, Gabe. It is for a situation like this to go as long as it did without the Commander-in-Chief knowing about it, or the National Security Advisor knowing about it, or frankly, other leaders at the Department of Defense. That's not the way this is supposed to happen.
Kind of the understatement of the year. There's nothing to review, and they know it. You know, on my first day in Washington during the transition period following the 2000 election, former Transportation Secretary and incoming White House Chief of Staff Andy Card spoke to the Bush administration appointees in waiting. His message was very simple. First, service wasn't about you. It was about serving the president, the institutions of our government, which are bigger than any one person, and the people of the United States. And second, no one is indispensable. And if at some point you forget either of those perspectives, then it's time for you to leave, he said. The condition Potomac fever presents as staffers and appointees ignoring those standards and losing touch with their sworn obligations, often for their own selfish purposes. When you serve as a member of the president's cabinet, as a presidential appointee or White House official, your life is not your own. In those few years that you hold that public trust, you work for the people of the United States and you serve at the pleasure of the president. What that means is very simple. It doesn't require a flow chart, a matrix, or a lengthy rule book. You don't get to have surgeries without telling anyone. You are a public figure that serves the public, and there are limits to your own freedom and privacy as a result of your larger duty to the nation. The spread of Potomac fever can be linked to another truism in government, and that's that the fish rots from the head. You know, one of the biggest problems with having a president like Biden, who's been either lounging at his beach house, at some donor's gated estate, or napping at Camp David for nearly 40%, yes, 40% of his presidency, is that level of detachment risks infecting the entire culture of the administration. It makes Potomac fever far worse. The situation with Secretary Austin not understanding that his personal life and private life take a back seat to his duties is unfortunately not an isolated incident in the Biden administration. In 2021, in the middle of a massive supply chain crisis that was impacting inflation and consumer prices, Secretary of Transportation and left-wing wunderkind Pete Buttigieg went on paternity leave.
This question about whether men, parents, women should have paternity and maternity leave, and the answer is absolutely yes. In our view, that is the policy of this administration.
No, they don't. Cabinet secretaries don't get paternity leave. Maybe to virtue signal to liberal soccer moms they do, maybe legally they do in some regard. In reality, when Mr. Buttigieg disappeared from his office for weeks to spend time with his baby and his husband, it was also a dereliction of duty. Now, as only the second openly gay cabinet member in history, the Biden DEI White House made every effort to sweep the controversy under the rug. You know, I've been thinking about that old Ronald Reagan quote that comes to mind a lot these days. Some people go to Washington to be someone, and some people go to Washington to do something. Now, he may have been referring to elected officials, but the concept applies to cabinet secretaries and appointees as well. Service as an officer of the United States government is an honor that should be reserved for highly motivated, highly qualified individuals willing to sacrifice. That sacrifice means less time with family, significant financial restrictions, long hours, 7-day work weeks, and even placing yourself in physical danger for the sake of the country. And for the party that sees increases in food stamps and welfare checks as a mark of progress, it's perhaps understandable that a sloppy, self-interested work ethic can even reach the highest levels of government service. The White House, of course, telegraphed their continued support for Secretary Austin. Naturally, there's no way that the champions of DEI are going to publicly ask for the resignation of the first black defense secretary. We certainly wish Secretary Austin the best for a full recovery, but his dangerous decision-making during a time of global conflict at once showed his irrelevance to the Biden White House and a dereliction of duty, both of which should prompt his retirement from public service immediately. And as for the rest of those in both parties susceptible to Potomac fever, the only cure is having the courage, the self-respect, and the patriotism to leave service to those who are truly willing to serve.